I thank the gentleman, and now we'll go to Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Rob Gray, and I was asked to testify today on the theory of competing currencies and the practical challenges that make such a theory difficult or impossible to implement. For nearly 5 years now, I've successfully directed the American Open Currency Standard, the standard for private voluntary silver, copper, and gold currencies that compete against each other, not against the U.S. dollar. Allow me to clarify, we do not consider AOCS-approved medallions produced and traded in our private barter marketplace competition at all to the U.S. Federal Reserve Note, because fair competition, as one would find in the free market, assumes the existence of a level playing field, existence of a standard set of rules. Those players who wish to compete honestly do so by simply relying on the merit of the value that they bring to the market. Well, no fair challenge can be made between honest men and thieves. And let me be clear, when I say thieves, I refer directly to the current private central bank and the men in government who allow it to exist. Brings us to a critical point. According to your employee handbook, Article 1, Section 8 says that Congress shall have the power to coin money, regulate the value thereof. And I would argue that since 1913, Congress has failed to do the job with which it has been tasked. In the free market, since our inception, the Open Currency Standard has enjoyed nearly 5 years of growth and success, and our mission of issuing a means that allows valuable exchanges among men who produce. In the next 5 years, we expect to expand our offerings and to increase our ability to keep up with the demand for our private currency. We are doing the job today that Congress would not. But back to theory. The use of community currencies here in the U.S. became popular back in the early 1930s. You see, at the time, the theory was that a group of the world's most powerful men were intentionally and systematically removing currency from circulation, creating artificial scarcity of money across the country. Small cities and towns felt it worse than anyone, but life did go on. Then, during the greatest economic depression the country had ever seen, individuals across the country developed their own mediums of exchange. They still needed things like food, clothing, daily essentials. They still needed to live, and they didn't have time to sit around and wait for the government to fix the problem. And so, according to historical records, thousands of community currencies were created, circulated, and traded in places where the scarcity of dollars was interfering with humans' desire to live. Individuals took it upon themselves back then to secure the means for their own survival and potential prosperity. More recently, community currencies have sprung up across Europe as the euro and other national currencies become increasingly unavailable and undependable. Today, communities all across the Eurozone trade their own money instead of the euro. Community currencies today are not simply a good idea in theory. Right now, alternative and complementary currencies circulate widely across the country, right now in many different forms. Ithaca, New York has Ithaca hours that are loosely based on the value of time. Berkshire, Massachusetts uses a fiat-backed fiat system. And many more communities circulate gold, silver, copper, AOCS-approved barter tokens as a medium of exchange. As for the practical challenges in the issuance and circulation of complementary currencies, there are plenty. In a voluntary system, those that participate in the trading of private currencies must deal with the possibility of counterfeiting, fraud, scarcity, acceptance, accounting, storage, and other issues, all without the luxury of Big Brother holding a gun to anyone's head to ensure their success. But even with all these risks, the market still moves on. As in any free market, good ideas circulate with success, and bad ones eventually fade away. Participants voluntarily choose to accept and circulate the highest quality currencies in exchange for their best production. Merchants accept complementary currencies based on the premise that someone else is willing to do the same thing later. Issues arise and are worked out by the market with only one light to guide them: the mutual exchange of value. No guns, no laws, no force, just the willingness to think outside the box and act on principle. Complementary currencies are not new in theory or in practice. Private currencies circulated long before governments erected themselves to interfere. What's new, however, is the public's apathy towards the government, the Federal Reserve, and their policies. You've managed somehow for the last 100 years to convince the citizens of this country that you're relevant. But now, just recently, we're beginning to see the tides change on this, and once it catches on, you'll be rendered completely obsolete. The greatest hurdle you'll face over the next 100 years is trying to convince we the people that you're still necessary, in spite of their failures to get the job done. Sure, some will rely on you for handouts. It's what they've always known their entire lives, and they'll be slaves right up to the point of their own destruction. But they don't know any better, and I don't blame them for their ignorance. In the future, you'll not have to worry about million-man marches or citizen journalists trying to catch you on camera. What you need to fear is no one paying attention to you. The next American Revolution will be fought with not with bullets and bombs, but instead it'll be one with the opposite consciousness. To that end, I'm here today to propose a solution. My understanding of this committee is that you want to be part of the solution. You want to believe that you're doing something good for the country. And so today, the greatest gift that you can offer to the people that you clearly represent, not to the legislature, but directly to the public, is what I call IR 1207, Individual Resolution 1207, commonly referred to as Ignore the Fed. Store your wealth in silver. Bank with non-fractional banks that pay real money on deposits. Use the card service network to satisfy dollar obligations. Do not try to compete with the Federal Reserve System. Simply ignore them. I ask you to leave the Fed their Federal Reserve notes and leave us our gold, silver, and copper. Do not push to redefine whatever representations we choose for our wealth. Let the Fed do what it wants with their legal tender so long as they leave our money alone. I warn you, honest money legislation is a wolf in sheep's clothing. The greatest thing this body can do is exactly what it's done so far. Absolutely nothing. All I ask is that you stay out of the market's way. The people in our world are very happy to go right along saving you from your own destruction by producing value against all odds, regulations, codes, and challenges that you throw our way. But leave our money alone. It doesn't belong to you, and it never will. The bottom line is very simple. Humanity is not going to wait for permission to survive. Things that cannot go on forever simply won't. The market will move on with or without you. And based on your rate of success to date, our preference is certainly without you. Thank you for the time.
And so in 2008, when I made the decision to start my own currency and go physical with it, that was relying on physical minted coins as the medium of exchange, I did it because it was very real and it was very honest. You can hold the coin, you can point to it, you can look at it, you can test it, you can know exactly that this is a real legitimate coin. So when cryptocurrency came out, it was kind of natural and understandable that I was skeptical about it, as I'm sure you were skeptical when you first heard about it as well. Now, some people weren't skeptical. They got it right away. Maybe they were young, maybe they were tech-oriented, maybe they understood digital economies. Maybe they got in early and they got rich and they're gone. Or maybe they got in early and they made a terrible mistake and threw their computer out in a landfill, and they're still hunting through that landfill today, digging out trash, trying to find that magic hard drive. But whatever it is, we missed it. And what we didn't understand back then has all of a sudden, over the last 10, 15 years, become a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And I would even argue that the industry is brand new and it is just getting started. But I missed it. Let's take another look real quick at what we missed, because when I got into making my own currency, I read an article by this great guy named Jason Hummel, member of our community today. Maybe he's out there on tonight's call. Let's scroll down and find out. Yes, he is out there. Hi, Jason. Good evening. I read an article and it said that anything that was going to be used as good money had to have three traits, three properties. There were always going to be three values of good money. Number one, it was going to be a good medium of exchange. You were going to be able to pass it easily from one person to the other. And I can easily toss you a silver or gold coin. It's very easy. For anything to be good money, it had to be a good unit of account, which means that I need to be able to count this thing easily. If I weigh it, I can check the exact weight. If I stack 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 on top of each other, I can quickly tell that there are 20 there. And it had to be a good store of value. And of course, if we look at the historical value of gold and silver over the last couple thousand years, we look at it and say, yeah, it's held its value over time. Maybe it's even gone up a little bit in value. So anything that was good money had to have those three traits. So let's pause for a moment and evaluate cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin. In that light, let's take a look. Is Bitcoin a good medium of exchange? Well, today I would argue that Bitcoin is a flawlessly perfect medium of exchange. I can send any amount of Bitcoin from here to the other side of the world and back in mere moments. Bitcoin's kind of slow, it's a little expensive. So let's say Litecoin. I can send any amount of Litecoin from here to the other side of the world and back in seconds. I can do it practically for free. And here's the best part of all. This is the best part. I can do it without even having to go through FedEx or UPS or the Postal Service. I don't even have to go through a bank to do that. I can do it at 2 a.m. if I want. And that value is there on the other side of the planet almost instantaneously. What a profound idea to think of this form of value, this form of money, as an unstoppable medium of exchange. It's flawless. Number one, let's think about cryptocurrency. Let's think about Litecoin as a unit of account. I can look at my wallet and I can tell exactly how many Litecoin I have. I can go to a Litecoin block explorer and I can figure out exactly how many Litecoin have ever been made. I know exactly where they are. I know exactly what wallets those Litecoins are residing in. I can take one Litecoin and I can shatter it into a million different teeny tiny mini Litecoins almost instantaneously and almost for free. I mean, think about what things were like when I was manufacturing silver coins. If I wanted to take a big 1,000-ounce silver bar, I'd have to melt that down into to the tub of water and turn it into casting grain. I'd take my casting grain and cast it out into a long strip. I'd take my strip and I'd roll it out into a thin strip. Then I'd have to punch my blanks out. I'd have to rim those. I'd have to anneal and polish them. I'd have to clean them, wash them, dry them, and then finally I could stamp them. That's a lot of work to take a 1,000-ounce bar of silver and turn it into 1,000 1-ounce rounds. But I can take a Litecoin and I can turn it into 1,000 mini Litecoins instantly and almost for free. It is a perfect and flawless unit of account. But here's the thing that got me stuck for years. Remember, I learned about this in 2012, right? Or before. And it wasn't until 2023 that I finally took off my horse and buggy gold and silver blinders and thought about number three. Is it a good store of value? Gold and silver have held their value over thousands of years. They clearly are a good store of value. But I can never wrap my mind around that last trait of good money. Is cryptocurrency, is Bitcoin a good store of value? And as I pondered that question, because we think about this volatility, prices up and down. When I launched my exciting coins back in 2017, Bitcoin was at $20,000 and then it crashed all the way down to $3,000. You can't use something that's that volatile as money. It just doesn't work. But what I misunderstood back then was that store of value doesn't mean that it's not volatile. Anything that's good money that's going to be a good store of value means that you can use it to get things later. That's all it means. Store of value means that I can trade it out later to get something that I find valuable. I can't eat my silver coin. I can't take an ounce of gold and I can't put it into my gas tank for fuel, but I can take those coins and I can go down to a pawn shop or a coin shop and I can sell those and turn them into money, which I can then use to buy food or gasoline. All those gold and silver coins are designed to do is just hold on to my value until I'm ready to spend it. And so what I was missing was that store of value doesn't mean that it's not volatile. There are lots of things out there are volatile. Currencies come and go and crash all the time. What I failed to understand was that store of value meant that you could use it later to get what you want. And what I failed to realize as I'm sitting there with my blinders on the gold and silver horse and buggy is that this Bitcoin freight train went flying past me. Because today you can spend Bitcoin at 54 million plus merchants all over the globe. 54 million merchants today. How, really? How? Why? Today, you can get a Bitcoin linked Visa debit card from a group like Coinbase and many, many others. And you can tap to pay with your Bitcoin store of value at 54 million places that take Visa MasterCard. And I never saw it coming. I was too focused on this physical aspect of money. And what happened to me in 2023, I finally saw the writing on the wall. I've been resisting this cryptocurrency thing for a long time. And I finally said, you know what? The world's not making any new gold and silver coin buyers. I'm basically selling fax machines over here. Kids today, they don't care about gold and silver coins. My daughter's not going to go out and buy a safe to stock up all the gold and silver coins she's never going to buy. The only gold and silver coins she'll get are the ones she inherits from me when I'm dead. Kids are into games. They're into NFTs, digital collectibles, in-game tokens and currencies, things that they trade in different places online. That's digital value. And when that finally hit me, I said, I'm out. I'm not making any more coins. I sold all my factory assets. I got completely out after years of coin manufacturing. I was done. And I knew that I was going to get into cryptocurrency. I didn't know which one. I didn't know how. I knew that I was selling these great coins and they work perfectly. But I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next. But I remember that thing in 2017, all that excitement, all that passion, and all that energy that was there in the cryptocurrency, because this crypto emerging technology, Bitcoin and all these other ones, this is like a bleeding cutting edge technology. And if we understand this technology early, just the same way that it happened with the US dollar when it first came out, if we get in on this thing early and we take the time to understand it, we've got an upside. We've got an opportunity. It took 20 years and an executive order for the US to go from gold and silver coins to the Federal Reserve note. Earlier you got in, the faster you got into that new program, whether you like it or not, the more opportunity and upside that you had. And it works the same way today with cryptocurrency. And I would argue that we are still in the very beginning of the digital currency future. Now, I'm not trying to convince anybody on this call in 30 minutes of what it took me the better part of a dozen years to come and understand. But I would like you to at least begin to open your mind to the possibility that cryptocurrency, number one, might just be the best form of money that we have today on planet Earth, maybe even possibly the most honest form of money. You can't make a fake Bitcoin. If I tried to send fake Bitcoin into your wallet, it would never get there. But if I put a silver coin down in front of you, you'd have a real hard time without metallurgical testing equipment convincing me that that was absolutely real. Cryptocurrency might just be the best form of money that we've ever seen. It's the most honest, it's the most transparent, and it gives the control of that money back to us, the people, in our hands, where it has always belonged. And it took me a long time to see that. And so when I got out of my coin manufacturing in 2023 and I said, I'm getting into crypto, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to do something great.